Good morning and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus of the internet, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Oh yes, we are back after a little delay to attack the second Surah, Al-Imran I think it's called. Yeah, so we're going to be breaking it down verse by verse into factual logical statements in English so we can understand who is this character, Allahu Akbar, and what the fuck is he talking about in this book. What does he mean? And more importantly, how does this affect us non-believers in our lives in the world today? So as I do every day, I'm going to now say to you, if you have any doubts as to my factual accuracy or you wish to question any of the claims that I'm going to make now, please first buy and read one of these, and after having done so you'll recognise every single word I'm going to say to you now is 100% factual to what Allah says in his book and what Muslims believe today. Oh, I've been looking forward to this one. So, if you'll remember from the previous episode, episode 51, which by the way is the best episode so far in my humble opinion, in the last episode we summarised and concluded our entire reading, verse by verse, of the first Surah, Al-Baqarah, and what we could glean from our study of the first book is that Allah is all-powerful, but he wants you to be totally obedient. You're not allowed to have any free will. You're not allowed to have any ideas, doubts. You're not even allowed to feel pain or fear or anything like that. You have to 100% do what he tells you in his commands in the book. Otherwise, off with the head, you're dead, or even worse, you will be grave tortured for an indeterminate amount of time before being bussed off to hell to burn forever. The second thing we know is that Allah, although he claims to love his Muslims and promises them great power and wealth and riches and to cover the world in his glory, what actually happens is they are in poor, tiny little crappy countries, suffering terribly, despite the fact that they are obedient to him and they're worshipping him all the time as much as they can. He doesn't recognise this and he punishes them and abuses them. And then the third thing is he's going to send them to their deaths against the world of Christians, Jews, apostates, pagans and atheists. In other words, fucking everybody else on earth apart from Muslims. Allah is going to command them in his end times genocidal prophecy to go over there and kill everybody else so that they can only worship Allah and the world will be his. The only problem is when they get all the loot and the money, they have to give it back to Allah, and if they don't, he's not going to love them. So that's where we got to last time. Let's get started with Surah number 2, Al-Imran, with verse number 1. Ah, this is so great. This is a great start. 1. Everyone will get what's coming to them, for Allah is the only giver of mercy. Allah is Lord. There is no God, only Allah, who lives and is self-subsisting and closely watches all men. Allah did make all good things, including the Torah of the Jews, the Gospel of the Christians, and in order to confirm the main book he gave them to us. Now, end of verse. That was the first 3 verses, which are very short and to the point, unlike most of the times when Allah is telling us things. And I feel like this is this is exactly what he did in book 1, where he starts off very slowly with very simple, easy to understand statements of fact, like bullet points, so that you can't make a mistake and there's no misunderstanding. So what he's saying here, and I love how he starts off like this, and I quote, "Everyone will get what's coming to them," end quote. What could he mean by this? So breaking it down, what he means by everyone will get what's coming to them is that his Muslims will get what's coming to them if they don't obey him, and the Jews, Christians, apostates, atheists and pagans, fucking everybody else on earth, they will get what's coming to them from his Muslims when they do obey him, and what's coming to them is death and sin and dying in fire forever via his end times genocidal prophecy, which is definitely going to happen, trust me bro, says Allah in his book. Then he finishes off the verse by saying Allah is Lord. So just in case you didn't know, Allah is the guy who is making all this happen, and if you don't believe me, I made a book about it, so it must be true, says Allah of himself. Then he goes in verse 2 into saying there is no God, only Allah, who lives and is self-subsisting and closely watches all men. So he's again repeating what he said in his earlier verses in Surah 1, Al-Baqarah. 1, there is no God, pretty much what he said before and what we believe of him. He knows that God is real, but he doesn't like God. So what he's telling you, O Muslim and reader, there is no God, only Allah who lives. So he is telling us, even though he said earlier he was God, no, he's not actually God. He lives. He's a man who lives. He's self-subsisting, so he doesn't need food or water. He's got food and water for himself, i.e. his Muslims are feeding him and making him rich by giving all their loot and money to him at his mosques. And the last thing he says is he closely watches all men. So just in case you forgot, Muslims, I'm watching you. I hear and see all things. I know exactly what you're thinking. I can see the future. If you fucking don't do what I'm telling you, I will know. That's what he's saying here. And then he finishes up in verse 3 by saying, Allah did make all good things, including the Torah which he gave to the Jews, the Gospels which he gave to the Christians, and the reason he did this, O reader, is in order to confirm the main book, his Quran. End of verse. So, I think it's quite interesting how Allah claims that he gave the Torah to the Jews, then he gave the Gospels to the Christians, and the reason he did this is to make sure everybody knows his book, which, by the way, isn't actually the oldest one, this is the newest one, but anyway, he gave the much older Torah to the Jews, then he gave the slightly older Gospels to the Christians, in order to confirm that his much newer book, the Quran, is the main one. And the reason he did that is because he's definitely not mind controlling the Jews and Christians like he claimed earlier to be in sin. And they're definitely agreeing with what he says here. So the Torah definitely doesn't say that he is Satan and that the morality of God should be observed. And the Gospels of the Christians definitely don't say that he is the synagogue of Satan and that we should actually not listen to a word he says. No, it definitely doesn't say that, O Muslims. But you're not allowed to read those books, so you'll never fucking know. That's what this means. That's what he's saying here. I told you were going to love this. Verse 4. The first one was definitely the Quran. Like, he literally tells you there, even though he's just said something totally retarded and wrong. Just in case you have any doubts, number 4 is the first book, his Quran, is definitely right. The first one was definitely the Quran. It definitely wasn't anything else. Trust me, bro, honest. The book which commands you to do right and wrong is the Quran, which is this book here. And if you don't believe me, I wrote a book about it telling you. This is Allah's logical fallacy, which he fucking loves drumming into our heads. Just in case you had any doubts, Muslims, this is definitely the book to read, even though I gave the Torah to the Jews and they're doing really well. Even though I gave the Gospel to the Christians and they're doing really well. Despite the fact that I prophesied the fucking total opposite of that would be true, and I said I was mind controlling them to be bad and in sin and not have money, and they do. Even though all that is true, this is the one to follow, and if you don't believe me, read it, says Allah in his book. I fucking love this. Number 5. Nothing on earth nor heaven is hidden by Allah. Verily it is nothing left unrevealed. End of verse. So breaking this down, nothing on earth nor heaven is hidden by Allah. Verily it is nothing left unrevealed is Allah saying to you and me, the reader of his book, if we have hidden anything in our houses or if we have hidden anything in our lives, he's watching you, he will know, and he'll punish you. That's what he's saying here. Allah is saying, even now to other people, not even just Muslims, who he originally claimed this applied to, now he's saying nothing on earth or in the heavens is hidden by Allah. So obviously the fact that God is doing his thing and communicating with us Christians via his silent prayer method, Allah actually knows all about that. And he's mind controlling us anyway, so he knows everything. So just in case you didn't know, Muslims, don't bother hiding that money from me, give it to my mosques. Evil Christians and Jews, don't bother having plans that don't include me being your God. I will know. That's what this means. I love this. Number 6. He makes you in your mother's bowel, shaped as he pleases. There is definitely nobody else doing the baby making, and it most definitely was Allah, who is wise and loved and great. End of verse. It's interesting how he writes these, isn't it? So, I just need to question Allah quickly. Far be it from me, Mr. Allah, respectfully, to question your all-knowing status and the fact that nothing is hidden by you. But something that perhaps isn't true and might be hidden from you is the fact that babies don't actually grow in the bowel. They grow in the womb. So if you're putting all the babies in the bowels and shaping them there as you please, how are they making their way into the womb where they actually do grow? Anyway, I'll let you think about that, Allah. You're obviously tired. You know, it's been a hot day. You need a little bit of a nap. His dementia's kicking in again, that you'll remember from the last time when he absolutely didn't know what the hell he was saying in the last verse and then said the opposite in the next verse. I think that's another case of Allah. We'll just let him off. So he finishes off by saying, there is definitely nobody else doing the baby making. Just in case you had any doubts or you thought, hang on a minute, how are you making all the babies and telling them what to do if the evil Jews and Christians were... Anyway, nothing to see here, Muslims. Just believe what I'm saying. Don't have any doubts or questions. Otherwise, you're bad and I won't love you. And if you expressly say these questions out loud where other Muslims can hear you, off with your head, you're fucking dead, says Allah in his book. So we move on. Oh yeah, and the last thing he says is, it was definitely Allah who did that, who is wise and loved and great. So we know he's putting babies in the bowel to grow because he's so wise. We know that it was definitely him that did it and that nobody else is going to question it because he's loved and great. Of course it's going to be loved and great Allah who's wise who puts babies in the bowel. Anyway, oh yeah, and I should say here, the original Arabic which I converted into this with my translation says bowel. But the guys who wrote this English one, which Allah didn't write because he says he only writes in Arabic, this is in English. So this one, whoever wrote this one, corrected for this and said it wasn't bowel that he meant, it was womb. It was a bad translation, but it was translated by an Arabic guy who is also an Islamic imam. So if anyone wants to question you, O readers, when you're arguing about this with idiot, angry, pissed off Muslims in the comments, when they say it doesn't actually say bowel, that's a bad translation, you come back to them and say, don't use the translation then, use the original Arabic Quran, where it clearly says mother's bowel is where babies grow and Allah puts them all in there. And we carry on. Number 7. Allah sent down his Quran, which is absolutely clear and easy to understand. And also some of the verses don't make a lot of sense and aren't really easy to understand. But the evil, perverse, heartless kuffar, you know, those evil Jews and Christians that we fucking hate, we're going to kill later, they don't worship it, they don't understand it at all, they don't even wish to grasp Allah's commands. They only seek discord and will interpret my will incorrectly because they don't like me, says Allah in his book, even though he claims he's mind controlling them and he made them that way. But anyway, let's break that down. Allah is saying that he sent down his Quran, which is absolutely clear and easy to understand. So just in case you didn't know, all that stuff we went through in Al-Baqarah, which was not clear and not at all easy to understand, actually it was clear and easy to understand. You're just an evil, perverse kuffar if you didn't get it. That's what he's saying here. But then he scuppers himself by saying also a lot of the verses aren't clear and easy to understand. They're actually fucking difficult to understand and not clear at all. But then he scuppers that a third time by saying those evil, perverse, heartless kuffar, they're only not understanding these clear and easy to read understandable verses because they're evil kuffar and they want to get it wrong, even though I'm mind controlling them and I put them in the bowel to be born like that. And then he finishes off by saying they will not grasp Allah's commands at all because they don't want to. They're seeking discord and will interpret my will incorrectly on purpose. I must be mind controlling them to be super good at this, because if I'm mind controlling them at all, they wouldn't be doing well, but they are doing well, and my mind control must be failing. So just in case you thought it was me and my mind control, O Muslims, that was causing all this, it's not, they're just doing it on purpose. So they've actually got free will to go against me, but I'm also mind controlling them. And just in case you weren't absolutely sure, this is absolutely clear and easy to understand because it's in the Quran, and I told you before, my Quran is absolutely true. And if you don't believe it, you're fucking dead. So that's what this means. In summary of this extremely poorly written, illiterate, retarded, maniac, foamy-mouthed idiot verse that Allah wrote, 1. He sent down the Quran, which is absolutely clear and easy to understand. That's the first fact that can't be disputed because Allah wrote it. The second fact is that some of it actually isn't, and it's very difficult to understand and not clear. I fucking love this. The third fact we know is that only people who are evil and perverse and evil Jews and Christians aren't understanding the clear and easy verses because they want to misunderstand it. And the fourth verse is I'm actually mind controlling them into doing that, and they're not grasping it because I'm mind controlling them, even though I just told you it wasn't clear, but it's supposed to be clear because I have to be right. And the final bit is they seek discord and will interpret my will wrong so that they can seek discord, even though it was clear and accurate that they couldn't get it wrong, and I'm mind controlling them to not do that. Says Allah in his own book. Disclaimer from me, this is my opinion now. Allah is so fucking mental and stupid, if he indeed did write this, that he has literally put so many contradictions and logical fallacies into this one verse, verse 7 of book 2. I actually think I could have made a whole video just about verse 7. I literally could have made a 40-minute video solely about verse 7, about how it's easy to understand and that has to be true because Allah, but it's also not understandable because that has to be true because Allah. And how those people over there definitely understand it and agree with it because Allah, but they're also disagreeing with it and it's because they're stupid because Allah, but Allah's mind controlling them and created that way because Allah. And finally, they're actually ignoring me and seeking discord and going against my will because Allah. It's fucking beautiful, isn't it? Triple chef's kiss for you, Allah. But go back to sleep. We'll carry on later without you. And then he finishes off by saying, but none but Allah truly understand thy meanings. And this is fucking the best thing ever. So despite everything we just said, none but Allah truly understand thy meanings. So even though he said it's clear and easy to understand, even though he cancelled that out, we'll stick to that. Even though it's clear and easy to understand, nobody but him will understand it. Not even his Muslims, not even the imams that preach it, not even you reading this now or me who spent a month reading it. Nobody will understand except Allah. So basically the only reason he wrote the Quran is for himself. It's like his personal diary. When he sent it down to his Muslims, when he wrote the Torah and the Gospels and gave it to the Jews and Christians in order to point them towards this book, even though he commands at the threat of death that everyone read this book and believe it and not question it, even though all those things are true because Allah, none but Allah will truly understand thy meanings. And that is what I'm going to stick to in the breakdown. Allah's admitting here, even though he commands you to, and he created you and mind controlled you and bullied you into understanding everything he says, Allah even admits here, none will understand this except him. That's the only true thing he's ever fucking said. And he's gonna contradict it in about 2 minutes, so keep watching. Number 8. They say, O Lord, keep us obedient and loyal, for thou hast keenly guided us. Thou art the giver of an endless bounty. They say, O Lord, you will gather all Muslims against those evil Jews and Christians in the end days prophecy, of which none will have any doubt. Allah always keeps his promises. End of verse, end of reading. So I feel like we've got a lot to break down here. This is going to be a long one, but it's going to be fun for me and hopefully you. So he starts off by saying, they say. So despite the fact that he was telling us in narration now in the current day about what we're doing, now he's saying they say. He's talking about Muslims in the past, you know, the Moses era Muslims. So if you didn't understand any of that rambling nonsense that he just filled your head with, that I just narrated to you, and the last thing he said, I'll remind you, is none but Allah truly understand his meaning. So this includes previous Muslims. They say, despite the fact that they don't truly understand it, O Lord, keep us obedient and loyal, for thou hast keenly guided us. Using this, which nobody understands, but is totally true, even though, he's mind controlling them. O Lord, keep us obedient and loyal, for thou hast keenly guided us. Thou art the giver of endless bounty, says the Muslims. About the bounty that Allah has kindly left in the pockets of the Jews and the Christians, and commanded them that they cannot keep once they've killed, they have to give it back to Allah. But anyway, they definitely said, oh, thank you, Lord, for this great, merciful, wondrous bounty that you've given to the Jews and Christians that we're not even allowed to have. Thanks for that, Allah. Then they say, oh, Lord, definitely we 100% believe you that you will gather all the Muslims in a big force against those evil Christians and Jews, and we will definitely rout them and wipe them out like your end times genocidal prophecy says will happen. In the end day, which nobody will have any doubt of. Not even me making this video now, says Allah in the book. Well, I can tell you right now, Allah, I have very big doubts about this. I know you're saying that nobody will have any doubts, but I've got to say, I have doubts, and they are fucking overly massive, big, very factually based doubts about you and your end times prophecy, and basically everything you say at this point, because I have a logical mind, and I have read other books, and I have been in the world, and I know this is more of Allah's fucking bullshit. But to make sure you don't think it is, the last thing he says is, Allah always keeps his promises. Apart from the one he made to Talu and his insurgents that they would defeat Goliath, and then they would invade and kill Israel, and then they would get the Ark of the Covenant. Even though you made those promises, oh Allah, you never got the Ark of the Covenant, did you? Nope. Did you invade and beat Israel? Fucking nope. And did you make Talu the king victorious over Goliath? Fucking no. In fact, there was another promise. You said, none who shall be seeing victory will be those who didn't worship me. He basically said only people who have only ever worshipped him would ever see victory in their fights. But as we know, King David, good old King David, who put this star on the flag of Israel after beating Goliath, was the one that killed Goliath, who has never fucking worshipped you, Allah, and actually fucking hates you. By the way, that's one of the reasons I doubt your end times genocidal prophecy being a real thing. And that is the end of our reading. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. We will be back later on at 4:15 to go through some more inane ramblings of Allah, dictated kindly by an illiterate paedophile warlord called Mohammed. Until then, have a good day, God bless, and I will see you, lovely, beautiful people, in the next one. Ah, that was fun. It's good to be back, isn't it? I suppose I should thank Allah, the Lord of all mercies, grace and wisdom, for mind controlling me. So anyway, that's the end for now. I'll see you back here at 4:15. Until then, goodbye, God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.